Hey, what's going on, dudes and dudettes? I am the Mystical Green Beanie, and the first issue of 3 Jokers finally dropped on Wednesday. I wasn't originally going to do a video on this, but seeing as how it's the biggest comic of the month, hell, maybe even the biggest comic of the year, saying that it would be pretty fucking stupid not to is an understatement, to say the least. So, this comic actually goes back, 5 years? God damn, this book took a long time to come out. Because back when Geoff Johns was writing Justice League for the New 52, he built up to this massive event called Darkseid War. And in that story, Darkseid was killed by the Anti-Monitor, and all of the members of the Justice League were turned into gods, and there was this big titty goth waifu named Grail, who was revealed to be Darkseid's daughter, and Darkseid became a baby because... reasons? It was a comic. It was a weird comic during a weird time in DC's history. But in that story, there's this character named Metron, and Metron, for those of you who don't know, is one of the New Gods. And the New Gods are a whole thing in and of themselves, but basically, the New Gods are higher dimensional beings who represent abstract concepts like good and evil. But Metron rests somewhere in the middle because he's the new god of knowledge, and knowledge is, of course, unbiased. And he sits on this chair called the Mobius chair, and it makes him omniscient, to a point. And Batman winds up sitting in the Mobius chair, and he asks the chair the identity of the Joker, and the chair tells him that there are 3 Jokers. Flash forward to now, 2 relaunches later, we're finally seeing that plot thread explored. And I gotta be honest, going into this, I wasn't really expecting much. I'm not a huge Geoff Johns fan. I don't think he's bad. I think he's decent at best, but his golden years are behind him. The last comic that he did that I really enjoyed was maybe Flash Rebirth. Aquaman had a great start, but then it kept going, and yeah. He also wrote Justice League during the New 52, which I didn't like. His run on Action Comics was hit or miss, with more misses than hits for me. Superman Secret Origin, while it had its moments, ultimately felt redundant and unnecessary. It's also a real shame that that book was sandwiched between Superman Earth 1 and the New 52 Action Comics series, because those just blow Secret Origin right out of the water. His actual run on New 52 Superman starts out well enough, but then quickly goes to shit after all the stuff with his Clark's identity getting leaked to the public. Doomsday Clock I found offensive and embarrassing and ultimately just not worth further pissing on Alan Moore's legacy. So yeah, I'm just not as trusting of Geoff Johns as a lot of other people are. So when I heard about this 3 Jokers concept, my eyes rolled in the back of my head harder than a goddamn bowling ball. Because A, this idea of the Joker being 3 different guys this entire time in Batman never noticing makes him the world's worst detective. B, this whole event is mapped out to explain why the Joker behaves differently every couple of years, which is kind of been there, done that at this point. That was literally an entire plot point in Grant Morrison and Tony Daniels' Batman run, and the answer that he gives is Joker reinvents himself every so often to keep the game fresh, because he's fucking crazy. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty satisfying explanation. And C, the whole idea to me just sounds creatively bankrupt. It would be like if DC made a Superman story where it turns out that Jor-El is alive and he turns out to be... Oh, Christ, you've got to be shitting me. But yeah, this book had a lot going against it for me, so imagine my surprise when I actually enjoyed the first issue. Yeah, I quite enjoyed this comic, to the point where I went to my local comic shop and I bought a physical copy, which I rarely do anymore. I almost exclusively read my comics digitally these days, or just buy the trades, because comics take up a lot of space. And at the end of the day, trade waiting is the cheaper alternative. But this first issue was really good. Like, good enough to the point where I thought buying it and putting it in a collection was worth it. Okay, so getting into the story, it starts out pretty simple. There are 3 bodies recovered from Ace Chemical. All of them have the same deformations that the Joker has, and only one of them survived. Meanwhile, there were 2 other crimes committed in Gotham City, and both have eyewitnesses placing the Joker at the scene of the crime. And I like how nobody on the GCPD or even the Bat family immediately comes to the conclusion that, oh, there must be 3 Jokers. They're all thinking about how it could be a copycat, and that there are Joker impersonators out there who are causing these crimes. Because of course they would think that. If anything, that's the most rational explanation. But yeah, Batman and Batgirl are trying to figure this case out while escorting the surviving victim to the hospital, but that's when the Red Hood gets involved, and he starts interrogating the guy while in the back of the ambulance, which was actually pretty funny. Speaking of which, I like the cast and the choice of primary characters here. Barbara Gordon Batgirl is obviously here because of the absolute hell that she went through doing The Killing Joke. Jason Todd is here because of Death in the Family. He was the Robin who was bludgeoned to death by the Joker with a crowbar, then blown up. I mean, he came back, but obviously that shit messes with you. And of course, Batman is here because Batman. No duh. But I do think it's potentially a really interesting idea, having each Joker specifically target Bruce, Barbara, and Jason. And I don't mind spoiling this book since it came out last week, but, spoiler alert, if you haven't read this comic, pause the video, put it in your watch later, and come back when you're done reading it. Are you done? Cool. So, I really like the part where Jason blows the Joker's brains out. I think that scene was marvelously handled. This felt like Geoff Johns at his best. Not only that, it felt like Jason Fabok at his best. And I'll talk about the art in just a minute, but everything in this sequence was glorious. And this is one of the main reasons why I'm recommending this comic so highly. After Batman, Batgirl, and Red Hood take out this Joker's gang, which I believe this is the Clown? Because the 3 Jokers that are established are the Criminal, which is the Joker from Batman #1, he's the first Joker, the Comedian, which is the Joker from The Killing Joke, and the Clown, which is the Joker who killed Jason Todd and is hinted at being the Joker from the Silver and Bronze Age. Also, Gaggy's here, and he's this Joker's old sidekick from, the 60s, I think? But it wasn't really around for that long. Wait, okay, where was I? Oh, right, so after the Clown is tied up and his gang is taken care of, he really starts getting in Jason's head, talking about how, at the end of the day, Jason is the Joker's ultimate tool against Batman. The former sidekick driven insane, driven to the point of becoming the anti-Batman, making Bruce's life an absolute living hell, and in that way, in some respects, maybe Jason was a better Robin to the Joker than he ever was to Batman. So yeah, Jason shoots Joker in the face after this, and Barbara scolds him, but Jason tells her that she didn't really do an effective job of stopping him, because if she really wanted to, she could have. But she didn't. And I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but that felt very Watchmen to me. It reminded me of that scene in Vietnam after America wins the war, and Dr. Manhattan watches as the comedian shoots and kills the very pregnant and very underaged mother of his child, which is a far more respectful way of paying homage to Alan Moore than... yeah. I also think the art in this book is amazing. Jason Fabok and the colorist Brad Anderson did an amazing job here. This feels like a comic that's been worked on for years. There's a certain level of prestige in this comic's presentation that really floored me. And Fabok has this absolute command of the page with his fight choreography and action sequences, which is really impressive because he's working with the 9-panel grid, which isn't entirely action sequence friendly, but he makes it work really well. And he takes full advantage of the 9-panel grid, and he does some really fun and interesting stuff with it. There's also a lot of images that I'm sure are being traced here, but it doesn't feel lazy or hackneyed, but much rather like he's paying homage to prominent Batman artists like Jim Lee, Jim Aparo, Brian Boland, Alex Ross, Bill Finger, Marshall Rogers, etc., etc., and in a way, trying to make this book visually feel as definitive as possible. I also love the costume designs in this. Barbara is obviously wearing a more armored version of her classic Batgirl costume, which I like because I think that's her best design. I mean, I get what the Burnside costume was going for. You know, it's calling back to the Yvonne Craig costume from the Adam West Burt Ward TV show of the 60s, and I do like the Sean Murphy costume, both of them, but something about this one just feels quintessential and practical. Then there's Bruce, and he has this really interesting design where it feels like the Keaton Batsuit, but in the aesthetic of the comics, and I can't explain it, but I just really dig it. Like, something about it just looks really cool to me. And finally, Jason's redesign of the Red Hood is really fascinating. It's a twist on the original Red Hood costume, but he's also wearing a Robin tunic underneath the leather jacket, and that's a really interesting choice. And I wonder if that means something, or, you know, if it's just there to look cool. I also think the way each Joker is drawn is really well handled, because in the hands of maybe someone else, I don't think there would be such a clear differentiation between each of the Jokers outside of maybe the way they dressed. But Fabok and Anderson do a really good job of drawing and coloring the faces and giving each of them subtle facial expressions that feel unique to each era that they're supposed to be representing. But yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed this comic, and in all honesty, and this is gonna sound really petty by the way, but I went into this comic expecting to hate it. You know, I thought it was gonna be trash, and not only was I pleasantly surprised, I was happy to be proven wrong, and I hope that Geoff Johns and Jason Fabok can maintain that momentum. And obviously, I wasn't the only person who enjoyed this first issue. Three Jokers was actually trending on Twitter last week, which is just insane to me. You know, a comic book. You know, not a comic book movie, not a comic book TV show, or a video game, or a stupid controversy surrounding a character's pop culture relevance. A comic book was trending on Twitter. That's amazing. You know, that's the type of stuff that makes me feel really proud of being a comic book reader. But yeah, those are just my thoughts, but what about you? What did you think of the first issue of Three Jokers? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you still on the fence like I am? Because I hope they stick the landing, but hey, I've been disappointed before. Let me know down below in the comments section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie, thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, adios nachos, adios. Charged up.